Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Jason knew what awaited him even before he walked through the door. The long bike ride had been less of an exercise and more of an emotional preparation. It was as if every mile he covered helped him organize his thoughts, reminding himself that it wasn't worth exploding, begging, or losing control. When he turned the key and pushed the door open, he felt that heavy presence. It was a silence that said it all, as if the air was heavier because of the truth about to be spoken. Sophia was at the table, her eyes fixed on some point between the wooden surface and Gilt. She didn't look up immediately. She waited for him to drop his helmet on the floor and approach, as if the distance between them could make any difference in what was about to happen. When she finally looked at him, her face showed a mix of shame and expectation. She was waiting for the impact, waiting for a broken man, perhaps even for an outburst that would make her feel less like the villain. But Jason didn't put on a show. He simply observed with the calmness of someone who had already lost everything. "Inside of me, Jason, I need to tell you something." He stood there for a few seconds, then went to the fridge and filled a glass with water. He took a sip, as if his body was just going through programmed motions. Then he turned to her with the most neutral expression he could manage. "It's about Ian, right?" Sophia froze. The color drained from her face. The answer caught in her throat. She tried to maintain control, but she had been disarmed by a question that stripped her of any power. "How did you?" "Everyone knows." "Sophia, I was just waiting for you to say it out loud." She was silent for a few seconds, as if trying to recover the script she had mentally rehearsed. "I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how." Jason rested his elbows on the counter and looked at her with exhaustion. Not anger, not pity. The kind of frustration that only exists when you expect more from someone who once had everything in their hands. "Do you really think I believe that you didn't know how to tell me for all these months?" She started stammering excuses, but he raised a hand, asking for silence. "Do you think I didn't notice when our kids changed the way they looked at you? That they avoided even talking to you? Noah stopped having dinner at the table. Ava made up excuses to sleep over at her friend's house. They knew. They were just waiting for the day I'd do something about it." Sophia ran her hands over her face, unsure of what to say. She tried an emotional appeal. "Jason, I know this hurts you. I'm not going to try to justify what happened, but I want to fix it. I still believe in us." He laughed in disbelief. It was a short, dry laugh without joy. "You believe in us just now, right now?" She stood up, taking a step toward him. But Jason stepped back. "Stay there. Listen. This whole thing ended a long time ago. You just didn't notice because you were too busy hiding messages, deleting calls, making up excuses. I didn't want it to be like this, but it was. And it doesn't help to blame the moment, the tough phase, the routine. You had choices. You had time. You had chances, and you wasted them all." She looked small there, trying to piece together the right words. But it was already too late. Jason walked to the hallway, opened a drawer, and came back with a folder. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward her. "The divorce papers are in there, with dates, signatures, copies of everything." She looked at the folder as if it were a piece of her own failure, a printed reminder of everything she had destroyed. "You already had this ready for weeks. And why didn't you give it to me before?" "Because I wanted to hear it from your mouth. I wanted to see if you still had the courage to be honest. At least once." His voice remained steady the entire time. It was as if he had already cried everything out inside, as if the pain had been exorcised before the scene even unfolded. She sat down again, drained of energy. She took a deep breath and spoke almost in a whisper. "I messed up, and I don't know how to move forward from here. You'll figure it out alone." He turned and left the room, leaving her there with only her conscience as company. The sound of the bike being placed on the garage rack was the last thing she heard before she began to cry. Outside, Jason wiped his face with the sweaty towel from his ride. The tears he had held back for weeks were there, mingling with his heavy breathing and the frustration of someone who had expected loyalty and received disdain instead. But as much as it hurt, he knew this was the beginning of the end, and sometimes the end is the only way to start over. The next morning, Sophia woke up and tried to follow her routine as if something was still intact. She made coffee, set the table like she used to on calmer Sundays, as if that simple gesture could erase the previous night. She hoped, maybe, that the smell of fresh coffee would bring some peace or redemption. When Jason walked into the kitchen, she attempted a restrained smile. It wasn't returned. He just glanced briefly, grabbed his usual mug, and leaned against the counter. She realized any attempt at normalcy was useless, but she tried again anyway. "I know things are terrible, but I ended things with Ian. I wanted to save what we have. I still do." Jason took a few seconds to respond. He spun the mug in his hands, took a sip, looked at the floor for a moment, and then raised his gaze directly at her. When he spoke, his voice was clear, unhurried, as if every word had already been memorized. "You didn't end anything, Sophia. He did. You just accepted it because you had no choice." She opened her mouth to argue, but he was quicker. "He ended it because Grace found out. She's the one who cut him off. Who threatened to take the kids, who pressured him into ending it. He found himself cornered. And when there was no way to keep up the lie, he dropped you. That's why it ended. Not because you wanted to fix something here." She leaned back in her chair, feeling the blow. Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell, maybe out of pride, maybe out of shame. Jason continued, this time without raising his tone, just emptying everything he had kept inside. "I know more than you think. I know about the after-work meetings, the flimsy excuses about being busy, the afternoons when you said you needed time alone. And I know about every single one of them because Grace told me." Sophia frowned, surprised. "You talked to Grace?" "I do. Since she sent me that message asking if I thought something was wrong between the two of them. She suspected. She reached out to me cautiously, respectfully. She said she wanted to confirm before taking any action. From there, we started sharing information. After a while, confidences. Then support." It took her a few seconds to understand the weight of that revelation. The silence between them grew thicker. Jason approached the table, leaned on it with both hands, and faced Sophia directly. "While you were with her husband, I was talking to her. We shared the same therapist, went together a few times, rode bikes in a group. She knew I needed someone who understood, and I knew she was dealing with the same pain. The difference is that we both chose the truth." Sophia pressed her fingers against each other. The pain of knowing that Grace had taken that space, that she had been so close, was a kind of silent humiliation. But Jason didn't spare her. "Can you imagine how hard it was to stay in control while you lied to my face? I pretended to believe you because I wanted to see how far you'd go. With every new excuse, I watched you with colder eyes. It was like you truly believed no one would notice." She tried to argue. "I got involved during a fragile moment. I was insecure, I felt invisible." Jason interrupted firmly. "You weren't invisible. You just wanted to live an adventure without caring about the mess afterward. What you lacked was character, not attention. What you lacked was responsibility, not affection." She fell silent. His words hung in the air, cutting off any attempt to justify. He stepped back and leaned against the sink, crossing his arms. "You always had everything here, tolerance, love, partnership. And you threw it away for something shallow, disposable. And now you want to rebuild yourself on empty words. That's not how it works." She lowered her head. A lump formed in her throat, but she knew nothing she said would change anything. She tried one last argument. "And you? Are you going to be with her? With Grace?" Jason stared at her for a long moment before responding. "I'm not with anyone. And even if I were, it would be for completely different reasons than yours. Because it wasn't in bed that we connected. It was in the pain, in the exchange of truths, in the respect that remained amidst the wreckage." She seemed to shrink. Her body collapsed. Her shoulders dropped, as if the weight of his words pressed her inward. She stood up slowly and left the kitchen without saying another word. Jason stayed there, staring at the emptiness of his mug. He didn't feel relief, nor anger. All he felt was the certainty that this story had ended the moment she chose to lie for the first time. The rest was just consequence. The following days were like living in a house where everything was out of place. Even though visually everything was still in its usual spot, the silence stretched through the rooms like a second skin, uncomfortable and constant. Sophia tried to maintain a minimal routine, as if it were still a way to pretend control. She woke up early, tidied the room, prepared coffee, but the gestures no longer served anyone but herself. Jason barely met her gaze. Short answers, direct comments, only what was necessary. Her presence had become a weight he carried while deciding how to end things with the least emotional damage possible. In a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of normalcy, Sophia approached him one late afternoon and suggested they go out for dinner. She said they needed to talk away from the house, away from the weight the rooms carried. Jason, reviewing some papers, just lifted his eyes and said he wouldn't play that role with her in public. Sophia felt directly hit because there wasn't even room for pretense. The rejection was objective and final. That night, she ate dinner alone. Sitting at the corner of the table, she pushed the food around her plate without really eating. Jason came in later, grabbed something quickly, and went upstairs. She stayed there, staring at the empty chairs, remembering all the conversations, laughter, and stories shared in that same space. Now, not even the kids showed up. Ava had called earlier in the week, saying she needed some time away, that the betrayal had affected her more than she imagined. Noah, harsher, was direct. "I don't want to talk to you right now, Mom. Maybe later." It was at that moment that Sophia realized the damage had spilled beyond the boundaries of the marriage. It had hit the entire family. The next morning, while tidying her son's room, she found a letter left on the desk. It was from Noah. She sat on the edge of the bed and read it. He had written it by hand, as he used to do when he was little, and left notes for his parents before going to school. The content, however, was far from childhood innocence. He said he felt ashamed that he never imagined his mother could do something so petty. Watching his father try to stay strong while everything crumbled had been too painful. And because of that, he needed distance to avoid treating his own mother like a stranger. When she finished reading, she broke down. She cried like someone who realizes they've lost more than they thought. It wasn't just Jason who had emotionally left. The kids had too. The family as she knew it had dissolved. She tried calling Ava. It went to voicemail. She texted Noah. No reply. She tried recording a video to explain but deleted it before sending. She realized that words, at this point, felt useless. She had said so many things over the years, and now none of them seemed credible. She tried finding refuge in small actions. She bought the kids' favorite dishes, left a note of kindness on the mirror, prepared a special Sunday lunch. Neither of them showed up. No response, no reaction. Jason, who had witnessed everything in silence, approached the sink late that Sunday afternoon and, facing her, said firmly, "You need to stop living like it's possible to reverse this. What we built has already collapsed. The kids are trying to survive the impact. So am I." She just nodded, too drained to argue. Jason grabbed the car keys and left. He was gone for hours. Sophia imagined 1,000 scenarios. She tried convincing herself he wasn't with Grace, but the doubt lingered. And in truth, the worst part wasn't the possibility of him being with someone else, but the fact that any place would be better than being with her. In the middle of the night, she woke up to a noise coming from the kitchen. When she went downstairs, she saw Jason with a small suitcase on the ground. He was taking some utensils from a drawer and putting them into a box. She asked, her voice faltering, "Are you going somewhere?" He didn't answer right away. He closed the drawer, organized the items, and then turned his face slightly, avoiding her gaze. "Just sorting out some things. Once the papers are finalized, I want to leave as quickly as possible." She leaned against the counter. It felt like the house was crumbling inch by inch. She tried to approach him. She extended her hand, but he subtly pulled back. He spoke again, this time looking into her eyes. "I understand regret, but it doesn't change what you caused. I'm not the same man who used to wait for you to come home, who planned surprises, who believed every excuse. You killed that part of me. What's left inside is just exhaustion." She took a deep breath, stepped back, and said, "Only I destroyed myself." He picked up the suitcase and went to the bedroom. She stayed there, feeling like everything around her had lost its value. The family photos on the shelf, the objects they once bought together, the memories scattered as decorations, all of it had become an inventory of failure. The next morning, she woke up early, packed a small suitcase, and put in some clothes, documents, a book, and a family photo. She walked slowly through the house. She stopped in the living room, in the kids' rooms, in the bathroom where she used to leave funny notes for Jason. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, took a deep breath, and went to the door. Jason appeared at the top of the stairs and watched her for a few seconds. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just looked at him and said, "Take care of the kids for me." He responded with a short sentence, but one that ended any hope: "They already know who truly takes care of them." She left with the suitcase in hand, with no specific destination, carrying the weight of her choices on her back. Jason stayed there for a few more minutes, firm. Then he went inside and locked the door. The divorce process moved forward with the precision of someone who had already rehearsed everything. Jason didn't leave room for improvisation or allow himself to weaken in the face of bureaucratic details. He delivered the documents on time, responded to emails clearly, scheduled meetings with the lawyer without delay. For weeks, he followed this routine with the same focus a surgeon uses when holding a scalpel before cutting into flesh. He knew every step would be a final, necessary cut. When the signature came, he sat quietly for a few minutes, the paper in his hands, and breathed as if finally surfacing after being submerged for a long time. Sophia tried reaching out other times, sending long messages, some filled with guilt, others trying to recall old moments, as if nostalgia could rebuild what she herself had destroyed. Jason read them but never replied. He read because he wanted to understand how far she'd go with those words and realized that even in her apologies, there was a certain vanity, an attempt to be forgiven to ease her own conscience rather than genuinely repair anything. It was on a Wednesday afternoon that he decided to pack up the last remaining memories. He stored old photos of the kids, separated albums, documents, school letters, everything that was part of building that family, which, despite crumbling, still represented the foundation of who he was. He didn't rush. He placed the items in boxes carefully, one by one, until he felt the past had been organized and sealed with tape. Afterward, he moved on to the next step, starting over. Grace, meanwhile, faced similar rituals. She had left the house she lived in with Ian, rented a small apartment to start over with her kids. She was determined not to let the betrayal define her life. As she and Jason began talking more frequently, they noticed an invisible line of care between them, built effortlessly but grounded in shared pain. Contrary to what many might think, there was no rush, no thirst to fill a void. They simply met. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for silent walks. It was during one of these walks that Grace mentioned, almost as if talking about a forgotten old dream, that she had always wanted to visit the state of Maine. She said she had never seen its coastline but had saved photos and itineraries in a virtual folder. Jason listened attentively. Without saying anything at the time, he began researching on his own. A few weeks later, he showed up at her apartment door with 2 tickets. A short trip, just to breathe away from the wreckage left by others. During the trip, they allowed themselves to laugh genuinely for the first time in a long while. They walked along trails, ate at hidden small restaurants, took photos without worrying about who would see them. There was no guilt, no rush. It was just a well-deserved break for people who had carried the world on their backs for too long. One night, while watching the ocean, Grace said, "I never thought I could feel safe again." Jason responded, "And I thought safety was living within a predictable routine. Now I understand that safety is being with someone who respects you, even in silence." After this trip, they returned lighter. Conversations became more frequent, meetings more regular. One day, Ava showed up at Jason's house and, seeing Grace preparing a snack in the kitchen, smiled. She approached, helped chop the vegetables, and stayed there, chatting as if they were childhood friends. Grace had always been careful with Jason's kids, never wanting to take up space that wasn't given. But the affection grew naturally. Noah, more reserved, took longer. But when he needed help organizing his move to college, it was Grace who spent the night packing boxes. No one said out loud that they were together. It wasn't necessary. Their actions spoke more clearly. One night, after a simple dinner at home, Noah looked at his dad and said, "You're calmer, happier. That's what matters to us." Jason smiled, placed his hand on his son's shoulder, and responded, "And that's all I want to keep being." Meanwhile, across town, Sophia watched everything from afar. Sometimes she scrolled through her kids' social media, saw photos of family gatherings where she wasn't present. She noticed the sparkle in Ava's eyes, the calmness on Noah's face. She received spaced-out messages, short ones. "Everything's fine here. The test went well. I visited Dad today." It was like watching her own family live without needing her anymore. One afternoon, she called Jason. Saw the number, hesitated for 2 seconds, and answered. He wanted to end it once and for all. On the other end of the line, her voice sounded weaker than ever. "Do you hate me?" Jason sighed before responding. "No. And maybe that's what bothers you the most, because if I hated you, I'd still be stuck in everything that happened. But I just moved on, and you're still standing there." She was silent for a long time. She tried to say something, but he ended the call with a simple, "Take care." That night, he cooked dinner with Grace. They laughed at a recipe that went wrong, listened to music on the phone, and then sat on the porch. The world kept moving forward. The wounds were healing, and love, the kind that grows from truth, respect, and complicity, finally made sense. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.